Long before we had paper, ink, or keyboards, we had stories. We had poetry. Humans have always been storytellers, sharing experiences, beliefs, and dreams through the power of the spoken word. Some of the earliest traces of spoken word poetry can be found in ancient oral traditions. Picture this. Thousands of years ago, long before the existence of written language, people gathered around fires, listening intently as a storyteller, or griot, weaved tales of gods, ancestors, and heroes. This oral tradition was particularly prominent in African and indigenous cultures, where griots would recount history, pass down lessons, and even deliver news. Their words were often rhythmic, melodic, and even accompanied by music. Similarly, in ancient Greece, we see the first spoken word poets. In the form of rhapsods, performers who memorized epic poems like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. These tales weren't merely read. They were performed with gestures, dramatic pauses, and a cadence that brought the narrative to life. This was spoken word in its earliest form, poetry meant to be experienced aloud. As writing evolved, poetry began to shift. With the creation of the written word, poems found their way onto paper, stone, and scrolls. Think about this moment in history like an old-timey format change. Kind of like when music transitioned from vinyl records to digital downloads. Now, poets like Shakespeare and the sonneteers of the Renaissance began writing in ways that could be quietly read and pondered over. But while the focus was on the written page, spoken word never truly faded. The spirit of performing poetry lived on in public readings, salons, and theater. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we see a massive revival of the spoken word with the Harlem Renaissance and the Beat generation. The likes of Langston Hughes and Allen Ginsberg weren't just writers, they were performers. They took poetry off the page and back into the public sphere. At jazz clubs, coffee houses, and art venues, poets would stand up and speak their verses, engaging audiences not just with their words, but with their delivery. Spoken word has always been more than just poetry. It's a voice for social change. In the 1960s and 70s, the civil rights movement, feminist movement, and other liberation struggles found an outlet in spoken word. Activist poets like Gil Scott-Heron delivered poems that were raw, rhythmic, and powerful. His piece, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," was one of many that addressed pressing issues of race, inequality, and injustice. Imagine the power of hearing those words spoken aloud in a crowded room, the air thick with tension and hope. This was a time when spoken word became a rallying cry, a way to mobilize people and challenge the status quo. As we move into the late 20th century and the early 2000s, spoken word evolves yet again. The birth of slam poetry in the 1980s changed the game. Mark Smith, often credited as the founder of the poetry slam, wanted to take poetry out of the dusty academic corners and put it back in the hands and mouths of the people. He organized poetry slams, where poets would perform and be judged by the audience, bringing a new level of energy and a competition to the art form. Spoken word began to flourish in urban centers like Chicago, New York, and San Francisco, where poets of diverse backgrounds used the microphone to speak their truths, from topics of love, loss, identity, politics, and everything in between. Spoken word became a reflection of the human experience. And then came the internet. With platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, spoken word found a new stage. The 21st century saw a new generation of poets, artists like Sarah Kay, Rudy Francisco, and Warsan Shire, who brought spoken word to global audiences. These poets harnessed the power of words, not just to entertain, but to connect, educate, and inspire. Spoken word is no longer confined to a coffee house. It's now on your screen, in your headphones, and sometimes even on the subway. So why does spoken word captivate us? Why do we lean in when someone stands up and starts to speak poetry? Well, part of it is human connection. Spoken word is a raw, authentic form of expression. When a poet stands up and delivers their piece, they're not just reciting words, they're sharing a part of themselves. It's like a heartbeat set to verse, a moment where performer and audience are bound together by the rhythm of language, the cadence, the pauses, the emphasis. It all adds layers of meaning that simply can't be captured on the page alone. Another reason is its accessibility. Unlike traditional poetry, which some people find daunting or difficult to interpret, spoken word is immediate, it's direct. You don't need to get it in the same way you might analyze a sonnet. Spoken word meets you where you are, with language that's alive, vibrant, and often steeped in contemporary culture. Today, spoken word is a living, breathing art form that continues to evolve. From the open mics in local coffee shops to the viral videos on social media, it's clear that spoken word is here to stay. It's a testament to the enduring power of human expression, a reminder that sometimes the most impactful thing we can do is speak our truth. Whether it's a griot reciting stories by a fire, a beat poet echoing through a smoky cafe, or a young artist sharing their words on a digital stage, spoken word continues to be a timeless art that moves, challenges, and unites us. So next time you hear a spoken word poem, whether in person or online, take a moment to really listen. Behind every verse is a story, a heartbeat, a truth waiting to be heard. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of spoken word. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more explorations into the world of language and beyond. And hey, what's your favorite spoken word poem? Share it in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going.